Hello, brothers and sisters. I've been thinking about the idea of God's patience and his wisdom. I've reflected on the fact that as humans, we sometimes are disappointed or frustrated with God. We misunderstand him. We misjudge him. We accuse him. We're angry with him. And I've wondered to myself, how does God cope with that? And of course, as parents, we sometimes are very patient with our children and with our spouses. Other times we're perhaps not so patient, not so temperate. But of course, God is perfected. God isn't undermined by our antagonisms. He is still perfect, and he is influenced by our moods, undoubtedly. He is a God of body parts and passions. He has feelings. He has emotions. Certainly in the scriptures, we talk about God's righteous indignation. We also talk about his good pleasure. And so there are times when God greatly rejoices in his children, and other times where he is frustrated with us. But obviously, he has a way of coping very successfully with the way that we misunderstand him and misjudge him and are angry with him, oftentimes incorrectly rather, usually incorrectly, I think, always incorrectly, arguably, because we don't know the full circumstances. But it's understandable that we would be angry. It's understandable that we would be impatient, that we would have a lack of full awareness or understanding of what he's doing. I've thought about the fact that the scriptures speak about temperance. In section 4 of the Doctrine and Covenants, we're told to remember faith, virtue, knowledge, temperance, patience, brotherly kindness, godliness, charity, humility, diligence. These are attributes that God himself possesses. He is patient. He is temperate. He doesn't lash out in anger. He is slow to anger. He's quick to forgive. He is wise. He understands things that we don't. He takes the long view. So his perspective is not simply on the basis of what's expedient or what's pressing for the moment, but what's in the long term and what is applicable as an eternal round. He understands strategy. And so he sees things that we don't fully comprehend. He sees the end from the beginning in a way that we don't. And so God is not... He's not imperfect in his emotions, in his feelings, in his sentiments, in his desires. He is perfect. He is perfectly finished. He has the perfect attributes of all these things: patience, temperance, godliness, goodness, virtue, mercy, might, compassion, empathy, generosity, fully benevolent. And so it makes much more sense when we think about a God like that, a God that's slow to anger, who is not outraged by every single thing that we do or say. He doesn't flip the handle. He doesn't lose the plot every single time we say or do something or misjudge him. He's willing to be misjudged, to be misunderstood, to be unknown. He's able to cope with that, because he knows in due course things will be made right. He knows that we will come to an awareness. He knows that we will grow up. Like all good parents who know that their children will eventually grow up and come to realize that their childish ways are now gone. Parents understand that when their children have temper tantrums, that this is something associated with the moment, that we haven't yet reached the maturity that we one day will reach. And so children will grow up, children will mature, children will learn, children will progress. And I'm so grateful for this, that the God we believe in and know and love isn't held hostage by every intemperate desire we have, by every expression of faithlessness. He's not held down by the fact that we don't always see things, or we misjudge him, we judge him unfairly, or we think he should have done differently. He plays the long game. He plays the wise strategy. He knows what's coming, and he's willing to be patient. He's willing to wait. He's willing to show love. He's willing to be assaulted and insulted by us, without attacking us, or without revenge, or without casting a stone at us, metaphorically or even physically. And so I'm grateful for this idea that God is a benevolent God. Of course there are certain things he's outraged by, terrible evil in the world, and of course he is fair and just. His judgment will be just and reflect that. But we also know that when we make errors, when we make mistakes, when we have misgivings, he is patient with us. He knows that we can grow. He knows that we'll change. He knows that we'll mature. And so he's able to not get caught up in the heat of the moment, or in the drama, the maelstrom of what appears to be so pressingly urgent. And to us it often is urgent and pressing, what seems like a tragedy or a catastrophe. And there are many genuine catastrophes in life, but we also know that God has a counterplay, and he has a plan. He has compensations. He has ameliorations. He has works that he wants to bring to fruition that will have an impact on us in the future. And so I'm grateful for this God, a God of wisdom, a God of a plan, a God of order, a God of justice and mercy, who knows what he's doing, who knows where he's headed, and knows what he wants to bring about. And we can rely on him. We can talk to him honestly and frankly, and even oftentimes we'll be unsure, we'll be uncertain, we'll be frustrated, we'll have a little temper tantrum. But we can have that awareness that he is still good, he is still kind. And of course, we ought not to exploit that. We ought to learn wisdom and restraint. We learn constraint. We learn temperateness. We learn to be slow to anger. We learn to be wise. We learn to be patient. We learn to be merciful. And as we learn those things, our relationship with him improves, becomes more mutual, more reciprocal, more understanding, more fair. We become more able to ascertain who he really is and what he really wants. I'm so grateful that our Father in heaven is wise and loving and generous and perfect, that he isn't like the person who has road rage, who freaks out angrily and selfishly on the road. Imagine the danger God could cause if he had terrible road rage and flew into a fit of rage every time we did something he didn't like. He would be a very dangerous God indeed. But I know he's a wise, benevolent, constrained, restrained God. He has control over his feelings, control over his emotions. He's able to respond appropriately, but without indignant hatred when that's not counted for, when that's not necessary, when that's not appropriate. He's able to moderate his response to the situation. I'm so grateful for our Father in heaven that is perfect, and for a Saviour who is likewise. And may we strive to learn of them and love them and understand them fully and rightly, and in time perfectly.